So this is the Flight Time podcast. I'm here with Matt, a Phoenix Suns super fan. How are you? How are you today, Matt?
Yep, very well, thank you. It's a good day to be a Suns fan, I'll tell you that much.
We're going to jump straight into that then. So my first question was, what did you make of the performance against the super strong Clippers team this season?
Yeah, it was good. I was hoping this one would be a win because we've lost to them twice this season, so they already own a tiebreaker over us. But it was good to get a win for a bit of confidence because it's fairly likely if the positions stay the same, we'll end up facing them in the second round. So it's really important. I know they didn't have Kawhi, but we were able to keep Paul George in check last night. So that was a nice thing to see.
I agree with that because obviously Paul George has been on a hot streak and he's averaging like near 30 points a game, I think. And the Phoenix Suns kept him to 25, I think. And I think the Clippers are a strong team, but Phoenix has beat so many strong teams this season. And I think they're kind of like the underdogs, even though they're the second seed. They're kind of the underdogs this season. Same with Utah. I think they're first and people are still sleeping on Utah. That's what
I agree
on that.
Yeah, I do agree. There was a comment a little while ago of us being an easy out at number 2. I think the way this team plays, they won't be an easy out in any round. I see all series going into at least 6 games, just with the personnel that we have on the team. You know, Chris Paul, for one, Devin Booker's got the same mindset and same mentality. But yeah, it's been really good to see them defeat the tough teams. We've got the best record in the league, I believe, against plus 500 teams. I think I saw earlier. I think it's like 20-8, which is what you want to see. We do have lapses against the sort of lower teams, which you do see happen. But you don't mind if it's a good performance, the other team just stepping up. It's when it's the bad performances you get a bit down. But no, having a good record, going into the playoffs against teams that are all going to have good records is great. Really, really good to see.
It is, and I think Phoenix are definitely they're definitely a contender for the finals from what I've seen anyway. And like it's a second seed, they're definitely there. So what I wanted to know next is how and when did you get into basketball?
So it's been a long time, to be honest. I got introduced to the game when I was about 9, I think it was 8 or 9. My sister's boyfriend at the time, he used to play at a fairly decent level and he got injured. Introduced me to the game, bought me a little basketball, put a hoop up in the garden, and it just went from there. He was a Suns fan, and I think that stemmed back to the Dream Team and Barkley being the main player there, and then all the news of him going to the Suns, and then obviously they had that great run going to the finals. So it kind of went from there. So I always have memories of watching a game with Jason Kidd in. That's how long I've been about, and him telling me that there's another player on the team who's very, very good, but unfortunately injured at the time. That was Penny Hardaway, who, as we know, by the time we got to the Suns, there was a lot of injuries going on, bless him. And then in my formative years, like I was 14 or 15 when we signed Steve Nash. A couple of years before we signed Amari Stoudemire, I remember rushing home from school, going on NBA.com to see who we had drafted and thinking he was called Amar Stoudemire or something crazy like that. I called him that for years because I'd never heard his name said. So yeah, I've been around for all of that time, and I've played basketball since then. Pretty much straight on men's teams. I was never really part of any children teams. It was sort of men's team and then school. And then I'm trying to get back into it again now, but obviously with the pandemic that messed things up a bit. But yeah, it's I've now passed sort of the love and everything down to my kids as well.
So did anyone think it was like? Are you a football fan as well? Or is it like, would you say you strictly prefer basketball?
I prefer basketball. It's the main sport I follow, without a doubt. But no, I do follow football as well. So yeah, it's not purely I limit myself just to basketball. It's not a situation like that. I know some people are that way. But no, for me, I do follow other sports as well.
How would you find it? Because obviously you're a fan of the Phoenix Suns, and last night I think they run at 3:00 in the morning. So do you stay up sometimes if you can, or do you just watch the highlights in the morning after?
I've got 3 children. I've got a 9-to-5 job. I've not got the capacity to stay up and watch any of that. I catch up in the morning. I tend to wake up and sort of jump on to see the quick sort of 10-minute highlights, and then I catch the game throughout the day. So I usually sort of just have it on while I'm working, and then I can concentrate a bit on it during like my lunch break. And then also I try to listen to a couple of podcasts as well, just to get a different perspective on different things, because obviously I can see what I see, but there are a lot of podcasts out there that look at the game in a different way and can look at it from an X and O's standpoint better than I can, and it kind of helps link some thoughts together. So yeah, I just try and take it all in, and then I try and write about it on the website as well. So just give people a bit of a recap.
I know how you feel with the 3 o'clock, because I mean, I used to be able to stay up and do it and like wake up, because I'm at college, so like I think it's like a 8 o'clock wake up, and sometimes I'd be waking up watching the games, but now I'm just thinking 3 o'clock, it's just too late at the moment, so I can't be doing that. But
yeah, no, the bubble last year was great because all the games, I think the latest was like 12:30 or something, so that wasn't too bad. And then like this past weekend, we're on Sky Sports, so we got, I think it was an 8:30 tip off. There's also been a 7 o'clock tip off, and I think there was a 6:30 one as well. So it's been, I suppose it's because the shortened schedule, they've had to squeeze them all in, but it's been an advantage for us fans that are supporting West Coast teams.
Definitely, like, because I think Brooklyn was on at 8:30 the other night, and obviously Brooklyn are kind of the team you want to watch right now with obviously Durant and Kyrie. So it's always good to have a team like that on. And like you said, there's been a couple on last year. There were like I think there was something like 5:30 that early. Like
there was a Knicks game that started about 5:30 last week, I think it was.
Yeah,
as
like
well.
Toronto always seems to be kind of Toronto. I think what's that always like. But I want to ask next. How did writing like stem from? Where did it stem from? Wanting to write about basketball and the Phoenix Suns in particular?
I enjoy writing in general. I do a lot of writing for my job, sort of just managing how-to guides and stuff like that. So I wanted to be a bit more creative. So I've got the Twitter and stuff like that, but you can't always get across what you really want to say. You can't articulate hugely because of the character limit. And I just wanted to have a bit of creative outlet really, and I just thought I enjoy writing. I'd like to think people will like to hear what a fellow British Suns fan has to say, and just went from there really. And yeah, I still enjoy doing it. There's some days where I'm like, oh, do I really have to do this? Like if it comes after a loss, it's always a bit tougher, and I tend to sort of delve in a bit more into why we lost, whereas with the wins, like I'm partway through writing last night's review, but it's more of a celebration of making the playoffs, to be honest, because really that's all we care about. It wouldn't have mattered whether it was the Clippers or the Minnesota Timberwolves at the bottom of the league. It wouldn't have mattered. We secured the playoff spot. So
that's exactly goes on to my next question: is how were your thoughts about finally getting into a playoff position after 10 years? Because it's been a long drought.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, the last run we had was 2010, as you just alluded to. And we went all the way to the Western Conference Finals, which was a complete surprise because I think we were 6th seed and made it all the way there. And we lost to the eventual champions, Kobe Bryant and the Lakers. So at least we can say that. And yeah, it was a real surprise. It was kind of like the last hurrah of the 7 or seconds or less Suns, because that off-season, Amari Stoudemire didn't re-sign. He went to New York. So I still have all those feelings now. I remember going to my basketball practice, laughing and joking around, winding up the Lakers fans and all that sort of stuff. So I still have those memories. And then we had the Goran Dragic and Eric Bledsoe teams that missed the playoffs by 1 game. That was a bit heartbreak because that was a massive surprise. And then we thought, oh, going into next season, it's going to be amazing. And the team fell apart. So yeah, it's been a real up and down sort of 10 years, something that I hadn't been used to as a fan. It's really, really refreshing. And to be honest, like throughout I don't think it's really sunk in yet. I think it's one of those things, because I said to my wife, like, we've made it. And she was like, but you're like already like one of the best teams in the league. You're going to make it anyway. I said, yeah, but this makes it official. Like it was always kind of like, oh yeah, we're definitely getting, but this makes it official, to have it written, to have that little cross next to your team name on NBA.com standings, to have that there is just fantastic. And it's the Suns are a real proud franchise. I think until 2010, they'd made the playoffs more often than not. I think it was like 62% of their lifespan, they've made the playoffs.
Yeah.
So to have a drought for that long, it's kind of taken some of the heartache away. There's some of it still there, but it's definitely softened it now.
Well, I mean, I must admit I'm a Golden State fan, and I think I picked the wrong time to support them because obviously what happened last season and this season's not looking too good. Because I like them because of Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, but I think it's been a rough season. It's been good to see Curry obviously go off and have like near 39 points a game. I think you were averaging maybe 36, but it was good to see.
An incredible run.
I think they're struggling for the playoff in tournament, and that leads on to my next question: is do you think they should keep that permanently? The playing tournament.
I've got mixed feelings. I think the reason behind that is because when you look at the West, everyone that's in that playing tournament, I think apart from the 10th place, who I think is San Antonio, they're hovering around 500. So every team that's going to be in that are over 500, so potentially could have a playoff spot anyway. And I think they deserve it. They have a chance to get in. However, in the East, I think 3 of the 4 teams are not going to have winning records. And I don't agree with it in that way. So yeah, I like it in a sense. And, it was a real benefit to the Suns, to be fair, last year, because, without that bubble run, we probably wouldn't have got Chris Paul, to be honest, because we were playing better basketball, but that really made him see the potential of the team and things like that. So I'm not totally against it. I think it needs a bit of tweaking if they do it. I think it would make more sense if there wasn't 2 separate conferences. If it was one giant league, it would make more sense. However, I'm against doing that. I like that it's separate. I know in America it's a bit different because if you've got sort of like the best teams on one coast and not the other, you're not always going to see those teams if you go to the games and it's your local team. Whereas obviously we don't have that over here. We buy league pass, we can watch any game we want. It's not so bad, but I like the traditional conferences. But yeah, there's positives and negatives. Keep it on the West Coast, get rid of it on the East Coast.
It's like you said. I mean, we know the West is just so much more competitive because I think like the East is constantly moving up and down. Like New York will win, Miami will lose, and they'll move up to like 4th. I think top 3 are solidified. I know obviously Brooklyn did, Philly did. I think Milwaukee like maybe 2 games off, I think. And then after that, it's literally just constantly. I guess whoever's on a winning streak is going to get that playoff spot next in the East, because in the West it's kind of solidified now.
Yeah, I mean the Wizards at the moment is like they were nowhere, and they've had an incredible run and got themselves into that playing spot. Atlanta, when they changed coaches, they went on I think it was a 6 or 7 game win streak and got themselves up to 4th. I know they got Trey out at the moment, but I think they'll still be in the mix there.
The Wizards for me are the underdogs of the East. Like they just beat the Lakers last night, didn't they? So they're not like a pushover team, and that team had AD in, so they're definitely a team to look out for. So my next question is, who I know you've said Steve Nash, but who is your favorite Suns player of all time? Then
I think it is Steve Nash, to be honest. I always loved Amari Stoudemire as well, because for me, he's everything that I would want in a power forward. He can all those amazing dunks, but he's also had sort of the modern side where he could shoot and all that sort of stuff further out. But no, Steve Nash for me, because I could relate to him. Same position play because I'm a smaller player. Obviously, he by actual normal people standards isn't small. I think he's 6'3", but by NBA standards, he's a small guy. But playing the same position, you look up to him, and the fact that he had ties to the UK. I think his dad and his mother are both English. He was born in like South Africa. His dad was a professional footballer. So yeah, there was that involved as well. But yeah, he rejuvenated the Suns once again. He was the best player on the best team, on the team that I supported. So yeah, it just went from there really. I would try and emulate. When I was at school, I taught my teacher how to teach the pick and roll just by watching Amari and Steve Nash. So they're a big part of my basketball journey.
I want to just carry on the Steve Nash topic a bit. Do you think he deserved that second MVP? Because obviously everyone says it's a bit controversial because they didn't get like the highest seed, and they were averaging like 15 and like 7. Obviously, everyone thinks Kobe and LeBron.
Yeah.
But do you think he deserved that?
I think he actually deserved the second one more. When you look at the team, there was no Amari that year. It was a bit of a ragtag group. They got Boris Diaw and Raja Bell, who were diamonds in the rough, really. No one expected them to be any good. I don't even think the coaching staff thought they knew what they were getting Raja, but I don't think they knew what they were getting with Boris. And D'Antoni unlocked that, and so did Steve. So yeah, I think he deserved it more. His stats were better because he had to score more. He had to, play harder. To be fair, when you lose a guy that was averaging 25, 26 points, the whole system changed really, and they weren't even smaller because Boris played centre most of the time. Obviously, Sean Marion had a great year as well. But no, I think he deserved it more. Yeah, players around the league also played really well, but that team would have easily been bottom of the West if Steve wasn't on there. And when you're still, I think they finished second or third that year as well, or it might have been fourth because I know that they played the Clippers in the first round. And actually, the playoff run that they had, it just solidified how great he played, really. Because I think they got to the finals again that year. So yeah, they got to the same place in the playoffs without an all-star power forward who at the time pretty much dominated every time he was in the game. So yeah, I think he actually deserved it more. I'm not saying that the other players didn't deserve it just as much, but you had that. It was a surprise because I think Shaq felt that he should have had it as well.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. It's the MVP. It came up on Double Clutch recently. I don't know if you're part of the Discord, but it came up on there and it came up on their podcast. But it's a real sort of, you make it up. And that's literally it. Like, because Chris Paul played really well in New York and then really well last night, he's all of a sudden, like the media are saying, he's in the top 5. At the weekend, I was talking to NBA Fans UK saying that he'll get a couple of fifth place votes, but it just shows what the influence that the media has. But no, I think he deserved it more, to be honest. Yeah, I think it was great.
I've never seen someone make that argument, and when you put it like that, that he clearly deserves it, because I think people forget it's the most valuable player to their team. Who was I going to say? Butler wasn't even in the running, and I think when he came back, Miami, in January, they won an 8-0 run, and he wasn't even in the conversation, and he was clearly the most valuable player. And it's Harden, people think he deserves it this season, but because he's had to do a lot of backpacking with Durant and Kyrie, takes some personal days. So everyone think I think this season it's definitely solidified on Jokic and Embiid, because them two just dominated this year. But this is what I was going to say next. Do you think Devin Booker's been disrespected and overlooked as an MVP?
He's been quite inconsistent this season. So his stats have stayed a bit similar to last year. I think he's dropped by about 1.5 points per game. His assists have gone down, obviously, with Chris Paul being there, but his turnovers have gone up. And I mean, last night he shot 1 for 6 from the 3-point line. So there's quite a few inconsistencies there. I'd say he had a better season last year, to be honest. Part of it is because it took a little time to mesh. Obviously, there was no training camps. There was only 3 preseason games. So there was a bit of that there. But yeah, I don't think he's being disrespected. So 2 weeks ago, him and CP3 were holding the 9th and 10th positions in the race. But I just think it's narrative, isn't it?
Yeah.
If Book at the beginning of the season had done a Derrick Rose and gone, I'm going to be the MVP at the end of the season, to get the media involved, and it probably would be a bit more in the conversation. But no, the consistency hasn't been there. He's had games where he hasn't played at an MVP level, and in my opinion, you've got to play at that level every single night to be in consideration. And the people that you've mentioned have, to be honest. I mean, obviously Chris Paul's had down nights as well, even though he's becoming in the conversation. But there's a lot of recency bias with it as well. Like I said, he's had 2 great games on a big stage, and the media are all over him. And it coincides with us clinching the playoffs, and it's all of that. Like I said, it all depends on what the media are writing and what they're saying.
And I totally agree, yeah, because I thought Devin, because I know he had a bit of a bad run recently, he wasn't playing up to his normal standards, and Chris Paul, I think he had like you said, another couple of bad games. Like he only averaged like 4 assists, I think, one game, which is obviously not the best for him. But my next question was about how do you think Chris Paul like affected the team? Because they were on that 8-0 run, which you mentioned in the bubble early, but now they just went from an 8-0 to a second seed. So how do you think he just impacted the team in general?
So I think there would have been some internal growth without him, without a doubt. I would have been happy if we'd run it back, the old team last year. So brought back Ricky Rubio. It was fairly obvious that Kelly Oubre wasn't coming back because as soon as he didn't sign a long-term deal, he was going. He was always going to be trade fodder. But I'm a big fan of Ricky Rubio. I followed him since he was in Europe. So I was a bit biased there. But no, he's brought an edge to the team, a mentality that Devin Booker has, as I said. But when you've got both of your leaders doing that, they've both been quoted as saying like steel sharpens steel. So as in they're going at each other, they're making each other better, they're putting each other up. But yeah, it's just that attitude, that swagger. I think we've I was reading something earlier, I think it might have been yesterday, and I think last year we were 17th in defensive efficiency, and this season we're 5th. So I think that's a big thing for him. But yeah, he makes every team better wherever he goes, and he just fits exactly what we needed. He does everything that Ricky Rubio used to do, but better. Yeah. And he's a better shooter. He's a better defender. I don't know what else you can say about him. He's found the fountain of youth. He changed his diet when he was in Houston, he went to a vegan diet, at least during the season. I don't know if he does it all year. And, we marvel at LeBron, what he's doing. Well, Chris Paul is putting up very similar numbers to what he was doing 5 years ago. So, yeah, his impact has been immeasurable, really.
I read an article somewhere saying Chris Paul said to the media once that him and Devin Booker's nearly got in fist fights before because of just both got that competitive mindset, which is what you need on a team, like, especially when you've got like DeAndre Ayton, who's like become kind of a bigger star this year because obviously he's become like the main center, and they got Jay Crowder, which were a huge pickup. He's had the experience to go into the finals, and he were a big loss to Miami. So having him was a huge like booster from with Chris Paul. And
absolutely.
I think Phoenix were lucky because obviously the Clippers really wanted Chris Paul because they need that floor general, the one who will handle the ball, dish it out, so plays like Devin Booker or Kawhi don't have to keep constantly making their own shots. So I think Phoenix definitely couldn't have got a better player really that to make them the better team what they are now.
Yeah, there were a few teams involved to go after him. Clippers was known. I think even the Lakers, if they could have put together a package, they would have. I think it just come down to I think Chris's family are back in LA. They used to be in Houston with him, but they went back to LA. So Phoenix is an hour's flight from there. For one thing, you've got obviously the potential that he saw in the team. And you mentioned DeAndre Ayton, his role has changed compared to before. He was a shoot first, offense only center, when now he's trying to be a defensive anchor, and it's going pretty well so far. He still has games here and there, but he's only 22. But yeah, we are lucky to have him. And when you look at a superstar on his level, they don't go where they don't want to go. It's a player empowerment league. I think the only one that hasn't really got exactly what they wanted, but it turned out all right anyway, was Kawhi. Yeah. The Spurs didn't give him a choice where he went. He ended up going to the Raptors though, which, he didn't like the climate. It's too far away from home because he's a LA guy, but he ended up joining a perennial contender anyway, and he just took them over the top. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen with us. I don't expect that to quite happen, but it's a case of superstars get what they want, and Chris. And to be honest, I mean, Sam Presti, give him credit for the OKC Thunder. He does right by the players a lot of the time. He's got a good reputation for that. And I think that was his thank you to Chris, because, they're doing, he does do the tanking stuff. They're doing it this season, but no one expected OKC to do anything, really. And they almost got to the second round.
That's why we're going to say, like, when you said that about Chris Paul, they literally took OKC, which like no one expected to even be there. and took him to a playoff and 6 games, I think, was it against Houston?
I think it was 7.
7. He took him against.
Yeah, I think they went to 7th game with Houston.
He took him to 7 games against obviously James Harden and Russell Westbrook team. So it just shows you his elite mentality and what he does to teams.
Yeah, he had a point to prove there though, didn't he? Like you just said, his mentality, that was him going, I don't need you.
It was to like James Harden, because obviously they brought him to Houston and they had that little spat, should I say, where
if James Harden wanted to keep him, he wouldn't have been traded.
Exactly. But so my next question, Matt, is which team do you think is the most dangerous to the Suns in the playoffs?
I mean, so far this season, the Clippers have looked pretty dangerous, to be honest. They're a pretty pesky team. You said about them going after CP3 in the offseason, well, that they've got their floor general now in Rajon Rondo, who seems to always have great games against us, even last year with the Lakers and stuff like that. So they're definitely pesky, and Kawhi does step it up when it comes to the playoffs. Also, we don't know about Paul George. I don't fully buy into all that he completely falls apart. I think there was more stuff going on last year. So yeah, Clippers. So we don't know what the Lakers are going to be like. We don't know when LeBron's back. I think he's fully healed now, to be honest. I think he's absolutely fine. I think they're just resting him up. And I think the injury that he had, where it was more of a pull, it's one of these things where you don't need to sort of get the rust off so much. So they're not rushing him back. Whereas AD, you need to sort of get the rust off for the injury that he had. So I think he'll come back in the last week. Kind of hoping they stay sort of 4th or 5th, so they can go against Denver. Hoping that they don't sort of drop more games to 7th, because that could be a problem for us. Because it's the Lakers. Anything can happen, and we haven't got many big men. That's our thing. Like, it's great with Ayton, and we've got Dario. He backs him up, but he's not a 5. He's not a natural 5. He's not very athletic, and he struggled against the athletic bigs. So yeah, I think the LA teams will be the biggest sort of roadblock for us.
And the Lakers are a big team with Andrew Drummond, LeBron, AD. Like that's quite a big team. And the Clippers, I think, have been like one of the most disrespected teams. Like, I feel like people aren't talking about how good they've been this season. Like, I know in the playoffs they've never been to a conference finals, but they've got Rajon Rondo, and even though he didn't like the nickname, you get playoff Rondo when the playoffs come. And obviously, you said Kawhi Leonard he's an MVP in the playoffs, and it's like he literally took that Toronto team. I know they were like Siakam and Lowry, but he took that team, and I think the Clippers are probably the most slept on team and the bogey team, which a lot of teams are going to struggle against, especially with Cousins behind Ibaka now as well, and they've got Zubac.
Yeah, if he can stay healthy,
and
stay on the court, I think they've got a good pick up there. It's just someone like that, he's got to be on a certain team, because I don't think his attitude is quite as bad as it used to be, but he's got to be kept in check. And I think when you've got 2 alphas already on the team, it'll be all right there. But yeah, it's I think they've got the 1st or 2nd best record since the All-Star break, so they're playing very, very well. I just don't like them. They've got this swagger about them that they've done stuff when they haven't. That's what I don't like teams like that. And like, I didn't really like Philly for that same reason. For a while, like when Ben and Embiid first got together, like the way they were talking when Ben was a rookie was as if they'd won stuff. I didn't used to like that. I do like them now. I must admit, I've watched them more and stuff like that, but I just don't like it when teams got a chip on the shoulder. Like Washington for years, when they had John Wall and when Brad Beal was a rookie, and I think they had Marcin Gortat and things like that, they were all acting like they'd won everything. I just don't like that. But, yeah,
I get what you mean with that. I get what you mean, because I think you've got to prove yourself before you have that chip on your shoulder. Like, because like you said, I do like Embiid a lot, and Ben, he is one of the best defenders, but I don't think he is the best defender. Like,
I must admit, I do like Ben Simmons. I wrote an article before the season started, before we traded for Chris Paul, on how we could get him, sort of based on the fact that I didn't think he fit into what Daryl Morey might want. But yeah, it's like I said, you've got to prove yourself first. I mean, like you said, he's a great defender, and he might win it. because he can defend so many positions. But he's either going to be a good thing that he's saying that to the media, or they're going to sort of retort and be like, well, you can't just talk yourself into an award. So I don't know how it'll go, but if he got it, I wouldn't say he doesn't deserve it.
I agree. He's a fantastic defender, but I think Giannis and all that. I don't think he'll win it again, but there's Giannis. There's loads of others compared, but Ben's probably, I think he's third in the running, so he's definitely up there.
Okay. Yeah.
My last question for you, Matt, is how far do you think the Suns will go? Like, not being biased throughout, how far do you think they'll go?
Okay, so I was asked this at the weekend as well. So the question I got posed with is head and heart. So if you want my actual sort of where I think they're going to go, I think it'll be second round. I think we'll face one of the LA teams. It'll go to 7 games and it will come down to the wire and it will just unfortunately fall the wrong way. But yeah, if we don't reach the second round, it'll be an upset. It'll be a failed season because Chris Paul doesn't go to teams now to just reach the first round. And I think if we make the finals and we don't make it out of the West, that will just be amazing. To go from not being in the playoffs to hitting that is crazy. But personally, I think second round is where we'll be.
Yeah, I think that's a good shout. I definitely, like you say, you don't want any of the LA teams. Like the West, though, every team's good. There's not really a bad team in the West. Like any team you come up against, it's going to be a fight. So I think the second round, it's a good pick. I'd like to see him get a bit further because it'd be good to see. Like,
I'd love it. It'd be amazing. It would be really, really good. But I just think, if we're being honest, I like to keep it real. I've like I said, I've been around too long to not. But yeah, I think that'd be good.
Yeah, that's all the questions I've had. Would you like to add anything else, Matt, before we leave it there?
Just thanks for having me on. Good luck with what you're doing. It's always great to have new people in the community. So yeah, welcome. I'm just gonna plug myself really. If you're a Suns fan and you feel alone because we're a small market team, come along and join us on Twitter and Instagram. Like I've mentioned the website as well. It's Suns Fans UK, all one word, and it's sunsfansuk.com. Just come along and chat. We've got a really good community. The whole NBA community on Twitter, NBA UK community is just fantastic. They're so supportive. And, even if you're new to the game, feel free to ask questions because even myself, there's things that come up all the time that I don't know the answer to. So yeah, come along, join in. It's a lovely community to be a part of.
Thank you so much for joining the podcast, Matt. Honestly, it's been fantastic.
You're welcome, Joe.
Thank you.